What impresses me so much about Grace Blakeley is that she is reframing socialism. So obviously the narrative that free market capitalism is freedom and socialism is just state authoritarianism is, a load of rubbish. But the narrative I actually think may partly be down to us on the left. Now, why would I blame us leftists for this? Well, socialism appeals to leftists because we want a system of addressing inequality, but that isn't the core of socialism. It's about freedom and democracy, a system that maximizes freedom to as many people as possible. And one way is economic democracy. Now, us socialists, I don't think have pushed this core idea hard enough and have partly really allowed the bad faith actors to misrepresent what socialism actually is. That is, until Grace Blakeley.
This dichotomy between centrally planned statist societies on the one hand and free market capitalist societies on the other hand. And what you realize as a Marxist is actually the state is not this separate entity that sits outside of capitalist social relations. It's fundamentally imbricated in those social relations. And so I kind of had this idea of framing this argument in terms of it's not free markets versus planning. Because, this often becomes quite a emotive argument for people on the right. It's like free markets preserve freedom, and that's why we need to, make sure we uphold them. And instead I thought, well, it's very obvious that within capitalist societies, we have a huge amount of basically centralized planning, whether that's centralized planning that's taking place within the state, within massive corporations, financial institutions, whatever. So this distinction that people have in their heads between free market, capitalist societies and centrally planned socialist societies is not applicable to reality.
So with the promotion of a new book, she is talking about how capitalism not only curbs our freedoms, but actually behaves in a way that capitalist supporters accuse socialists of, which is central planning and control. And she briefly takes on that argument in that clip. Corporations, right, they hate the free market because they operate in top-down hierarchies, whether that's complete control of the bottom line or buying up competition and monopolize. So internally, they are incredibly authoritarian. I mean, like when people turn up to work, they're told what to wear, how to behave, how much they get paid, how long they're doing it for. Has this complete top-down control, but also externally, corporations and big business also exert their control too. I mean, capitalists will say, we love the free market, but what do corporations do? I mean, what they're trying to do is either push other businesses out of the market or they buy them up. That doesn't seem like a free market to me. That seems like complete control. Socialism seeks to redistribute power away from centralization and give it to the people and the workers. Co-ops are an effective tool to do that. Now, Grace is promoting libertarian socialism by attacking the false myth that government is the only form of authoritarian that exists, which isn't true. I mean, corporate governance exists. When people think about authoritarianism, it's government control. Everyone is queuing up to food banks, wearing the same clothes, all grey and dark, and everyone's on the same wage, and that's what authoritarian is. That's only an aspect of it. People don't really look at corporate governance and corporate authoritarianism. Think about how much control business exerts on us. I mean, think about social media, for example. How many times have you had a conversation with somebody and talking about air fryers, okay? And then you're scrolling on Facebook or Twitter, and then you see an ad for it. And people jokingly, but also half serious, say, well, they're listening to us. I mean, they listen to us for our microphone. Of course, the state does have the technology to do that. But when you find out how it's really done, you realize how more intrusive it is. So basically, everybody has some form of metadata on them. And corporations, especially big tech companies, will take that information and they will predict our behavior, maybe even influence our behavior. And that's the way they can, target advertising to us. So when it comes to, if you're scrolling through Facebook, and then you stop and you see an ad, if you stop for just that extra half second and then carry on scrolling, that's a bit of information that is then sent to these companies. And then all your other interactions, whether it's liking certain Facebook posts, whether it's browsing, they even take your location data and they can find out where you've been, where you spend most of your time. And what happens is these tech companies start to paint a picture of you. They know about our own personalities more than we do. And that is how they can predict what you're going to buy or how you're going to respond to stuff. And that is incredibly authoritarian, incredibly intrusive. So our entire lives are controlled by big business. Almost everything that exists today is dictated by the maximization of profit. So most people can easily comprehend that states can use their power to attack our liberties. But corporations, again, they spy on us, collect our data, predict outcomes. Big Brother isn't exclusive to the states. And I think that's an important point to make. And I think it's amazing that Grace is doing this because we really haven't had a discussion on the fundamentals of what capitalism is and what socialism is, and many people who support the capitalist system do not understand what it is. You simply cannot have socialism without democracy. That's the core tenets of it. That is what socialism means. It's about the democratic control of society. Now, we love our democracy, supposedly anyway. I mean, we love to vote, whether it's local elections, whether it's general elections, and you'll hear people on TV say how privileged we are that we live in a liberal democracy as opposed to other nations that are living under dictatorships. But the one place we didn't democratize is the place we pretty much spend our entire lives, and that's the workplace. Everything is predicated on work. In order to survive, in order to pay bills and buy food and all these basic necessities, we have to go to work. So our entire lives are revolved around work, yet we haven't democratized it, which is crazy. So no, socialism or communism isn't about the state controlling everything and everyone's on an equal wage. Instead, it seeks to redistribute power and obviously wealth within society, but also within the corporation. Now, the USSR was a state capitalist endeavor. It wasn't socialist. If you listen to Richard Wolff, who I have been inspired heavily by, I think he's fantastic, explains that the USSR isn't a socialist endeavor because it doesn't change the fundamentals between the employer and the employee. So the relationship between the boss and the worker is exactly the same. The state just became the boss. So under capitalism, our CEO, the board of directors, they're the bosses of our companies. But changing that for the state doesn't suddenly mean it's socialism because the government does it. It's not true. It's still the same system of hierarchy, which is why the only way we can move towards a socialist society is democracy and freedom. Now, I do think the state can be used to take on the bourgeoisie. It is also a tool for transitioning from capitalism to socialism. That is one of Marx's ideas, and especially for Marx, he in his work, he talked about the state withering away. Now, I don't know if I agree with him that the state needs to be abolished to achieve socialism. In fact, I'm not even convinced that can even happen. I mean, I don't see how we can move to a stateless society. I know that's the end goal of communism. Sounds like a great idea. I'm just not convinced it can work. So I think the state should play a role of providing the fundamentals whilst getting out of the way in our everyday life. I think the state should be there to provide health, housing, food, transport, education, anything that's a natural monopoly. I also think it be used to curb exploitative power. But for the rest of the economy, it should not be in the hands of the state. It should be in the hands of the people. But it's important to recognize that in a post-capitalist society, we need to be free from state control and free from corporate control. Capitalism essentially shifts totalitarian power from the state to the corporation, whilst not completely diminishing the state. I mean, often states work with corporations to solidify power. So what I'm really enjoying about Grace is that she is bringing these libertarian socialist ideas to the forefront. That is the classic idea of socialism. In fact, libertarian isn't a right-wing label. It was nixed from the left. We used to always call ourselves libertarians, but we've kind of dropped that label. And I think it's important that we bring that back because the goal of socialism is freedom. Now, of course, what Grace is talking about isn't anything new. And again, she's bringing mainly the works of Marx to the forefront whilst tackling the myths of what top-down power looks like. But it seems to me that Grace is now one of the few prominent people to do this in the UK. And I think it's incredibly exciting. And if we can keep pushing this, we may have a breakthrough. And obviously it doesn't mean we're going to have socialism tomorrow, but I think we can potentially reach otherwise unreachable people. So I'm really loving what Grace is doing. And if you haven't already, you must buy her works. Now, I haven't read Vulture Capitalism yet. I'm currently reading Stolen, which is also by Grace Blakeley. So when I finish that, I will definitely pick up Vulture Capitalism. But if you don't like reading, just watching some of the clips on social media. They're very short, very informative, very easy to grasp. She's been on Navara a few times. She was on last Sunday, so I definitely recommend giving that a watch. But I really want to stress this point that I think that the entire narrative on this has been wrong. Even some of us lefties have really not pushed this idea because I think most people would say, well, socialists, they believe in more equality. And opponents to socialists would say, okay, well, I get where they're coming from, but they probably want to use the state to force equality on everyone. That is not socialism. It will never work that way. So we have to make people aware of this fundamental fact that capitalism is a controlled economy. We are not free under it. But socialism is freedom. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and drop a comment. It's good for the algorithm and I'm interested in what you have to say. If you're not already subscribed, please do and hit the notification bell. You can also support this channel by becoming a member for 99p per month. And if you're feeling a little more generous, then you can support us on Patreon for £3 or £5 per month. This channel for a while has been uploading every single day. and it's quite a lot of work that is still voluntary and scheduled around my paid work. But I have so much ambition, expect in the future to see more variety in content, such as interviews and Vox Pops. But I want this to be a fully fledged media organisation where not only is this my full-time job, but to have multiple people working for Turn Left. I like to see a live show in the future, more content that delves into culture, history, and much more. But that can only be done if there's money. So please, if you can, support us in any way that's in your capacity. And thank you to existing members, subscribers, and patrons. See you next time.